Thank you for joining us on this edition of the program platform. And in recent times, Plateau professionals have been having an opportunity to lead their organization in different fields of endeavor. And recently, we also have another distinguished Plateau son elected to head his professional group. We shall be discussing about the Nigerian Institute of Building, and we have here in the studio the president, who will be having his investiture very soon. So introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here on this platform. My name is Builder Professor Yohana D, Izam, the current president of the Nigerian Institute of Building. Of course, many viewers will also know that I'm current Vice-Chancellor of Plateau State University, Bokkos. So, summary.
Well, that's quite interesting. So we've had you here on this program some other times, but today we're going to be talking strictly about the Nigerian Institute of Building. And looking at the group, every other organization, I know there's some little politics. How is the politics in the building society?
Well, it's a professional group, and we try to, as much as possible, maintain a very non-partisan outlook in terms of our affiliations. As a matter of fact, we operate under the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, and then our regulator is the Council of Registered Builders of Nigeria, which is the body that licenses professional builders to practice. The Nigerian Institute of Building is the arm that trains those who are aspiring to become builders, and those who are already builders also receive training through programs that we call mandatory, CPDs, professional development workshops and seminars, and so on and so forth. So basically, we run a very democratic organization, and usually the hierarchy is such that to become a president, you will normally have to become a third vice president. From the third vice president, you will now rise to become the second vice president, and the second vice president becomes the first vice president, and the first vice president becomes the president of the institute.
Okay, no rancor, no much rancor.
So there is no rancor. It's a well-structured movement. It takes, once you are in the presidential line, it's a matter of course, in the next 6 years, you will hope to become the president of the institute. So it's more or less automatic, except in extreme, severe instances of gross underperformance, or maybe some professional misconduct, where a first vice president can be prevented from becoming a president. Otherwise, it is automatic that once you are a first vice president, you are president in waiting.
Okay, it's already known you're going to be a successor. So in preparing for this, how do you prepare, knowing that you're going to succeed to become a president? Are there things on your mind, occupying your mind, that yes, when it comes to my turn, I'm going to do this differently?
Well, obviously, because of the structured nature of the way the council, and by the way, the president is also the chairman of the council. The council of the institute comprises all the chairmen of the state chapters. And we have chapters in 36 states, plus Abuja, which is the FCT, making 37. And then you have the national leg, which is the elected officials of the National Executive Committee. And so all in all, you'll be talking about close to 50 or thereabout. And then the most important preparation is what you must have gotten being in the presidential line, because as the third vice president, for instance, you are heading the annual general committee planning for annual general meetings and conferences. And that is the most difficult place to be somehow in the presidential line, because the AGM is the melting point of activities where all the Nigerian builders will meet once in a year to take stock of their activities and to lay the agenda for the profession. And so as you are rising, you are also gaining experience, and you are having ideas that when I become president, this is how I want AGM to run. This is how I want annual conference to run. By the time you are second vice president, you are the head of the Professional Development Committee, another very important committee of the Institute. What does Professional Committee, what does it do? It does workshops and organizes seminars and professional development activities. It does write-ups, it does books, it does intellectual materials that help to guide the professional conduct of members in the Institute. So as you are heading that committee as a second vice, you are also having ideas of when you become president, this is what I will do. And finally, as first vice president, you are the head of membership and the finance of the Institute, which means that by the time that you run through the presidential line, you have already overseen the critical departments in the core life of the Institute, so that when you become president, you will be able to direct what the third vice, second vice, and first vice should be doing. And that's how the Institute operates.
That's a huge responsibility and also engaging for membership. You talk about membership. In some organizations, you just have membership. Are there categories of membership in the Nigerian Institute of Building?
Yes, of course, we do have, like most provincial institutes, we have student members, which is obvious. You cannot have a profession without people who are trained, or being trained to aspire to become members. And so, most likely all the students in the building departments, in the universities, in the polytechnics, student members of the Nigerian Institute of Building, if they register. Most of them, of course, do register. Secondly, we have another category that is called the graduate membership cadre. That will include all those who have just graduated from the universities and polytechnics, who have done their HND plus or minus 1 year experience, will be called graduate members. They will be graduate members up till about 2 years, 3 years, when they will have gotten some mentorship experience to move to what we call the corporate level of membership, by which time they will have been expected to, under the tutelage of a professional builder, and filling their logbooks of activities for a period of 3 years, showing contents in terms of professional activities that have been done, and having also gotten to write examinations and interviews, will then become corporate members of the Nigerian Institute of Building. Now we do all this so that we prepare them for license, because at the point where they have become corporate members, we present them to the Council of Registered Builders of Nigeria, where they will be licensed to practice, and they can then handle any building project successfully without much supervision.
Is there any place for artisan builders in your organization?
Yes, I should have also mentioned that a builder is actually not worth much on a building site without artisans. As a matter of fact, the National Building Code, which currently is in the works in the National Assembly, we've been trying to get an enforcement law to make it have the force of law, so that contravention of provisions of the National Building Act can become a crime. Makes it very clear that it is the responsibility of the builder to supervise the works of artisans and craftsmen. on building projects. And that is why it is very obvious that any other person who is managing sites or supervising artisans and craftsmen other than a builder, it can be defined as a quack, because he has no such function to perform under the laws. And so the artisans are very important to us. They are members of this. So all building artisans and craftsmen belong to the craftsmen cadre of registration in the institute. And so that cadre is there also for artisans and craftsmen.
Well, you're assuming office at a critical time where Nigeria has had some building collapses, but the recent one in Lagos is a monumental. And you did mention issues of research and all of these things. How does it work in terms of relating with other professional bodies? Because you go to a site, there's an architect, there's an engineer, building engineer, there's every other person there. Defining who really should take charge is an issue. And can you relate this to the tragic incident we had in Lagos?
Well, first of all, we have had cause to make statements to commiserate with what happened. We saw it again as another monumental disaster, which we were hoping will not happen. Since the last 7 years, we had one in a synagogue, church building in Lagos. Over 100 people lost their lives. That was catastrophic. And this one, as of the last count, we are talking about over 40 people losing their lives. And so it's such a heart-rending events that we hope something will be done drastic to curtail the incidences of collapses in this country. In terms of our experience, it's important that people understand the nature of building project procurement. Buildings are not procured like cars and furniture off the shelf. In other words, you don't go to a shop to procure a building. A building is procured in stages. And it makes the whole procurement process is unique. It's only in building that you pay in advance of production. You have not seen the building, but you have made commitments that at the end of the day, with what the architect has designed, I have a dream that this is what I will have. And that is the first point in the realization of building project. And even before then, we have what we call the pre-design stage. At that level, people must have looked at the issues about zoning, the title to the land, climate site analysis. There is also what we call soil test to determine the strength and the bearing capacity of the natural foundation. And after the pre-design, all those information will now be mainstreamed into the design phase. After the design phase, you now go into the construction phase. After the construction phase, you go into the post-occupancy space. And of course, for most buildings that will last 75 to 100 years, you also need to know that there is a phase for de-escalation, assuming you have to remove it if it has served its useful purposes. And so this is how it is with builders. So when you go to a site, we have different roles and responsibilities. Now, once the design team have made their designs, the production actually is where the builder comes in. It is the builder's responsibility to now interpret the designs that architects and engineers, and by engineers here I'm talking about structural engineers for buildings, because the building has to be structurally designed for integrity and strength. And then there are engineers that also handle mechanical and electrical aspects of building installation. And so interpreting all of these designs and actually producing the building on site is work of the builder. However, you are right, when you come to the site, you will still see the architects, you will still see the engineers, because they are also part of the design and they have to monitor what the builder is doing on site. It also confirms with the designs that they have produced. as consultants on the project side. So there's no role conflict actually. It's just that again we have had issues of people crossing over this one playing another person's role, and it's all part of the story of the building industry also.
Well, sir, I would say perhaps you have your job cut out for you in the sense that as you assume office, also you will notice. I have noticed the preponderances of estates. People are advertising estates, and then to question the issue of the involvement of your association and dealing with them. What we've seen in Lagos may not be the last of it.
Yes.
And that means you have a lot of work to do. How are you going to, you also talk about relating with the Federal Ministry of Works. In this sense, how is that collaboration able to work to ensure that this estate that I imagine every day, you see them on TV, you see newspapers and radio advertising for them, but danger seems to be looming because non-compliance to codes is one issue that we have to deal with in Nigeria.
Well, thank you very much. There are two very important aspects to development of estates. In the built industry, out of the 7 professions, we have one of the professions of estate management. I sometimes call them babies of the industry because they come in after you have produced the buildings and then they manage it. And so there is a management aspect of buildings that are meant for residential uses, but there is also the production. We are more interested in how these estates are produced. The marketing aspect, the management aspects, they're dealing with the rental values and how people get into estates and use them. Sometimes things that the core domain of estate managers.
The concern is in the building itself.
In the building, yes, there are concerns. I have had cause elsewhere to note that the quality of most of our estates are actually also not the kinds of standards that we love them to be. And we have recently also talked about the need to expedite action on the National Building Code bill, which is before the National Assembly. As far as the bill is concerned, it's going to bring about an enforcement law to make sure that the provisions apply to all buildings, whether they are estates, or they are hospitals, or they are schools, or whatever. What it does is to set the minimum standards for the production of building from the pre-design stage, the design stage, the construction stage. It tells you what the minimum standards of things to do before such buildings can be produced. We think that once this enforcement bill is at the end of the day, it comes out, and then we now need to domesticate it also at the level of the states. We think that if we enforce the provisions such that there will be sanity, there will no longer be under regulation. It will now reduce quackery because people who are involved in shady deals and cutting corners know that there is a law that will catch up with them. I think that even the estates will enjoy a lot from the enforcement of standards in the building industry.
So how does your organization relate with the Standard Organization of Nigeria? I'm looking at, I've seen also materials in terms of research. I've seen some videos have gone viral. You find concrete blocks elsewhere, you throw them, they can't even break. But the ones in Nigeria, the ones in Nigeria, by the touch of the finger, they collapse.
I have seen truly blocks that in those days, the standard test, the rough test on site was to lift it up to this level, and then when you drop it, it will still be there. But these days, of course, 9 out of 10 of our blocks will fail that kind of test. And it's not just about blocks. The building industry, in my view, has the largest number of substandard and fake materials for everything you can ever think of, from glass to steel to cement to, in fact, even natural aggregates, where they will say use clean river sand. You find people still trying to adulterate. They will go and dig up soil somewhere. And if you are not careful, you will think that it's a sand for concrete, it will not give you the same outcome. And so we are into partnership with Standards Organization of Nigeria in various aspects of collaboration. Part of it is that many of our members work in the construction, testing laboratories, inspection departments of Standards Organization, and then of course we do peer review also. We also supply research information. We also produce standards together with relevant research institutions, which the SON uses to monitor the quality of construction materials.
So back to your inauguration, you will be perhaps the 21st president, 54-year-old organization, and 54 years is an adult. And looking at it, what kind of activities are going to be involved for the build-up, or you just have it on that day and that's all? I'm sure also Plateau people will be excited. How much involved? Would you be moving the whole of Plateau to Abuja?
I would have loved to do that, but we are still under the COVID regulations, and we are mindful about the size of the crowds that we put together in programs. But I think it's a thing of joy, and so far I have received quite a number of indicators. Many people want to join the celebrations. Incidentally, it will be just on the 27th. What we will normally do is to just do an investiture. It's just a official change of battle between the immediate past president and the current president of the institute. And we're expecting many dignitaries, of course. An illustrious son of Plateau will also be speaking to the issue of regulations. No other person than C.J. Dakas, Professor of Law and Senior Advocate of Nigeria. And I think on the whole, many people will come on the program. I hope it will be an exciting moment.
On that note, we want to wish you a very successful tenure. How many years will you be spending as president?
2 years.
2 years. The work begins immediately.
Yes, it has started already.
So, where's the venue?
Chida Hotel is, I think, in Jabi area, also in Abuja. Okay. It's not difficult to locate. I hope to see you there.
Thank you very much for the invitation. We'll make arrangements with there. We wish you every success as you take over another responsibility coupled with growing the university. We're also happy seeing developments at the university. Professor Izam, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Viewer, that's the much we can take on this week's edition of the program. Next week we'll be here with another inspiring discussion. Goodbye and God bless.